This debt, this destruction.
Global news impacts us.
We have to change the way we live.
This is why we need independent media.
Cheers and salutations. Welcome one and all who are watching us here at Hard Lens Media. Hard Lens Media is live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Central on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Kick, as well as our show on Can TV. And again, consistency is key here for Hard Lens Media. And if you've been watching our show from the beginning since 2017, you may remember that we've been interviewing third-party candidates. And again, I believe that there should be a light shined on third-party candidates, especially those that are running for election, be it at local level, state level, or at the federal level. And because, yes, the 2024 presidential election cycle will be garnering a lot of attention, we have interviewed Dr. Cornel West of the Green Party. We've also interviewed another Libertarian candidate, Chase Oliver, who's running for the Libertarian Party nomination. We have also had the opportunity right now to interview, first time coming onto our show, Lars Mapstead, who is also running for the Libertarian Party nomination for 2024. Lars, for our viewers and subscribers, can you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got introduced to the Libertarian Party.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Yeah, I grew up really poor. In fact, I grew up with no electricity and an outhouse. And that kind of set the tone for a lot of my belief system and a lot of the things that run my life, essentially, my moral compass, essentially. And I grew up on a pot farm, actually.
Really?
And so, yeah, in Big Sur Mountains of California. So that also set the tone for some of the things that, are going on in my life. And I eventually climbed out of I was on welfare. I mean, we were really poor. And I climbed out of that. I lived near Silicon Valley, and I discovered the internet, and I discovered that I had a knack for marketing in 1994 when no one knew what the internet really was. And I immediately jumped in and became a serial entrepreneur. It just fit me perfectly. It was weird coming from a place of having no electricity growing up to then becoming a computer guy, right? Mm-hmm. And so I started a bunch of companies, and one of the biggest companies that I helped found was a company called Friend Finder Networks, which is dating websites. And we had 30 million registered users for these dating websites. And my partner and I grew that company to $350 million in sales with 600 employees. And then we eventually sold that in 2007. I thought I was going to retire, but I was only 40 something years old. And my brain wouldn't let me stop, right? Like I lasted for about 6 months, and then I was going insane, and I thought I needed to do something with my life that's productive. And so I had kind of gotten into collecting cars and car racing at this point. And so I started a bunch of Facebook pages around my hobby, and it was just for fun to show off my cars and to, connect with other people that were interested in cars and that sort of thing. And this ended up turning into a 10-year business and amassed 25 million fans on Facebook. And it was kind of not really planned, but that's how it turned out. So I'm kind of an expert at social media marketing, at getting eyeballs in front of things. And so that's part of the thing that I'm bringing to the table for my presidential run. And what kind of brought me politics was I've been voting my whole life. I was very interested early on in people like Ross Perot. He was talking about the debt and the deficit and how America was, piling on this debt and it was unsustainable. And he just had a kind of an honest way of talking that resonated with me.
I have to add into that, especially when you look at his infamous quote about NAFTA, where he made that vacuum cleaner noise, but people were laughing at him. I don't think people are laughing at him now. I mean, again, the hindsight is 2020 after all.
Yeah. So, I never really felt like I was represented by the Republicans or the Democrats. And so, and I'm kind of a maverick. So I like the underdog guy. I like the person that's kind of pushing against the system. And so he was that for me. Right. And then along came another guy named Ron Paul. And Ron Paul was also talking about the debt. I had gotten into the financial markets at this point and kind of was like interested in business and economics and that sort of thing. And so Ron Paul was resonating with me in that sense. And I ended up voting for him 2 times. But I still didn't know what I was. I still didn't know that I was a libertarian. I just was like listening to these guys. And I thought these guys are better than the 2 talking heads that the duopoly has put forth for us. Right. And at this point, I live in California, and essentially all my life I've been voting. It seemed like I was voting for Bush or Clinton. That was the two choices I seemed to have for a good chunk of my life, right? And I thought there's got to be something better. And I got so cynical that the system was rigged against the people that we were going to end up with Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton when, you know, in 2016. I thought that literally that was going to be the choices that were foisted upon us, right? And I came to believe that we don't really have a choice in America as far as our presidential candidate, that we're foisted these options. You get to choose between A and B when there's many other options, but no, they're not presented in front of you in order to have you allowed to select them as your candidate, right? And as I've pushed forward in this, I've figured out that the system's far more rigged than even I, believed back then, right? And so what ended up brought me to Libertarian was I was in 2007, 8, when I just started those Facebook pages. I was on Facebook a lot, and one of these quizzes was going around that was the political compass quiz, right? And I took that political compass quiz, and I thought this will be funny. I wonder if it'll pick if I'm a Democrat or a Republican, because I've never known which one I was, right? And so I took it, and I'm all the way at the top of the chart, Libertarian, and I'm like, what is a Libertarian? So I literally had to Google what is a Libertarian, and even though I had voted for Ron Paul, the message that he was a Libertarian didn't get through to me.
Well,
right?
the thing is, when you look at, because here's my issue with, and I wish there would be more pushback from libertarians, is that the Republican Party has been very keen on hijacking libertarian talking points, just like the Democrats have hijacked stuff in the Green Party. I mean, it's something that the two-party system has done very well. Case in point with the Republican or the Tea Party movement saying that they were also libertarians, which again was never the case, because none of them were pro-cannabis, especially I believe in 2010. So so I mean, obviously Ron Paul and Rand Paul, like to say that. I question their sincerity. And I wish the libertarians would push back more against the GOP, as the GOP have been stealing a lot of ideas and then backstabbing people in return, which is what the two-party system is good at doing.
Yeah, they definitely co-opt our messaging. The Democrats co-opt the messaging just as much as the Republicans do, but they both take it. And I think that's fine. I mean, that's good that they co-opt our messaging, because it means that we're pushing the boundaries, that we're changing the Overton window a little bit, right? I'm fine if they grab all the messaging, as if they're pushing us towards less government and more liberty for people. Please take all my messaging. Take everything I got, right?
I don't believe there's sincerity, though. No,
of course
they're
not.
Never going to do that. I mean, let's be real here. So I'll go on, but please continue. I mean to cut
you
off.
So for instance, legalizing marijuana, right? Like that really wasn't a thing until libertarians were really pushing it. And then the Democrats are like, okay, well, we'll kind of get on board with this or whatever. And if libertarians hadn't been pushing that messaging, it may never have really, it may have taken a lot longer for it to come up, essentially.
Now, again, obviously, there's going to be a process in picking who will be the nominee for the Libertarian Party, and it's yourself, Chase Oliver, 2 other candidates as well. What's going to differentiate your campaign from the others? Because let's be very clear here. Running as third party here in the United States, you have to climb over many mountains, knock over many barriers. There are various states. I know my state in particular is extremely draconian in having third parties be on the ballot. And of course, it has been quite some time before we've seen any third party candidate be on a debate stage with the 2 mainstream presidential candidates. And that's going to be an arduous fight. How is your campaign effectively going to change that for the Libertarian Party? How is your campaign going to differentiate yourself from the other candidates? And what is your overall goal and objective? Because ideally, I would love to see third parties win across the board. That goes for libertarians, Greens, independents, etc. But it is something astronomically insane has to happen for a third party to get into the White House. Is that your overall goal, or is it get to 5%? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that and talk about your infrastructure?
Absolutely. So, I was listening to Larry Sharp, who talked about earlier, and he had introduced this idea to me a few years ago about winning an electoral vote, that this could put libertarians on the map, right? And so I started, my marketing mind and my business mind started, kind of attacking this idea. and I realized that it was actually an achievable goal. That libertarians have only won an electoral vote one time in history, and that was in 1972, and it was a rogue elector from the Republican Party that like crossed over, and they quickly squashed that person and rescinded the vote, right? So, but the thing is that there's a couple of states which split up their electoral votes, and the amount of people that represent those electoral votes are actually relatively small. And so, with a small budget and a big activist movement, I believe that winning electoral vote is very reasonable and achievable. And
Aren't you worried that they'll do the same thing too? Because again, knowing Democrats and Republicans, they will become best friends to stop a third party movement. Case in point, there was a Green Party candidate who was running for U.S. Senate in North Carolina, and they did everything they could to end that campaign in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Republicans and Democrats, they all agree on one thing, that no one else should be allowed to participate in the republic at all. I mean, that's 100% clear, and they will literally change the rules in the middle of the race to squash you. I mean, and that happened to Larry Sharp in New York, right? That's exactly what they'll do. And if you watch, I mean, you know, politics is kind of nerdy if you get really into the depths of it all, but the ballot access rules, most people in America don't understand how unfair and how manipulated the ballot access is. Like you were talking about in Illinois, it's really challenging for anybody, third party or independent, to even make it on the ballot, to even allow for another option, right? And so what I've been putting forth a new plan called the Voters' Bill of Rights, essentially, right? This is one of the things that I'm working on that is kind of one of the movements that I'd like to see to come out of my campaign. And essentially what it is it levels the playing field. It makes it so that there are no special rules because you're in a party. Okay. I feel like if you are a gas station attendant in America and you want to rise up to become president of the United States, you should be able to, and you shouldn't have to change your thoughts and your principles in order to join one of these two parties to become president of the United States. And I think that we're doing a disservice to all Americans by allowing these two parties to collude together to retain power. I mean, look, is Donald Trump and Joe Biden really the best America has to offer? I mean, really? Like, out of all the people in America, you can't think of one person that would be better than Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Yet this is the choices that we have. And not only that, this looks like this is the choices we're going to get again, right? Like, I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me that goes to that thing of that we have the illusion of choice, because these guys have already been picked for us. The Democrats and Republicans are squashing their own people now. They've gotten so good at squashing third parties and independents that now they're suppressing people, and it's been going on for a long time, right? They suppressed Bernie Sanders. They worked hard to suppress Donald Trump. They're suppressing RFK right now. They suppress they suppressed Larry Elder on the other side. He had qualified for the debates, and they completely kicked him out off of a technicality. Right, he had gotten his 40,000 signatures or his donors, and he had done all the things to qualify. And then they said, "Oh well, technically you did qualify, but we're not going to let you in the debate." And so that's and because the Democrats and the Republicans control the main debate stage, that's exactly what they do to any other comers that they don't want to have on the debate. They'll just change the rules. Like, even if you qualify, even if you do like Ross Perot or Ron Paul and you qualify for the debates, a lot of times they'll just keep you out of the debates, right? They'll just change the rules for you so that you're not able to participate. They don't want to have any other choices in America. Because they want this power, right? They want to keep control of this power.
Let me ask you just a simple yes or no question then. Dr. Jill Stein, who's been made public enemy number one by the Vote Blue No Matter Who crowd in 2012 as well as in 2016, there were both examples where she was arrested and prevented from partaking in the debate stage. Would you go that extra mile to make your presence seen and heard? Because, again, third parties are always quickly dismissed by the establishment media, by the two-party system, and Americans are being, I guess, trained in many ways to view third parties as a spoiler. How are you going to break that narrative? And then also, number two, real quick on this one, how are you going to engage the 50%, which I call the silent majority? Because many people are burnt out by electoral politics, and rightfully so. I mean, at this point, do we even have what we want to call a democracy? Can you
Yeah.
elaborate?
Yeah, well, I mean, Jill Stein, they absolutely went after her, and in fact, even the FEC went after her. She got the matching funds, and then she spent the matching funds, and then they decided that she didn't deserve the matching funds, and they required her to pay back all the money that they had given her for the matching funds. And it was that's a personal thing. It wasn't the campaign's money. So she personally was responsible for that, and I think that was really a disservice and kind of gross to the whole system, right? So yeah, the duopoly just I'm sorry, I missed the last piece of your question there.
In regards towards how to engage the silent majority,
Yep.
the 50%, because
Yeah.
again, people are burnt out by electoral politics. Because many people in my audience, and I have a very diverse audience here, and a lot of them are like, "Kit, why are you even covering elections? It doesn't matter." And
Yep.
I hear what they're saying. I mean, obviously, it's newsworthy, and people need to know what's going on. We have to give commentary on it. But I understand where a lot of people are coming from, because even I'm kind of reaching that threshold of,
Mhm.
Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
screw the elections. It doesn't matter. I mean, I'll partake in
Yeah.
citizen ballot initiatives, and I'll ask you about that later. But again,
Yeah.
there is legitimacy to it. Doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count, because we live in an oligarchy, and the two-party system dictates who's going to become president. My vote doesn't matter, because Goldman Sachs has a seat at the table.
Right. Because you figured out that the system is rigged. You have figured out that we have the illusion of choice, right? And so you're disenfranchised. You think that you don't have any power to change the system because it literally is rigged. And so this is leading to division in America. Essentially small groups of people now are running the show on the majority of America. Like you said, 50% of people do not identify anymore as Republican or Democrat. Yet we're about to have a primary where the American taxpayer pays for private corporations. The RNC and the DNC are private corporations. They are private entities, and the American taxpayer is about to pay for their election process. Okay, and this is another part of my kind of voters' bill of rights, and I want to end the primary system altogether, because the primary system is part of the rigged system. Essentially, they use the primary system to keep out all other comers, where in fact all candidates who are running should have equal chance at the primary. Right now, in some states, if you get your primary ballot, you have to register as a Republican or a Democrat, and you get a separate different ballot based on what your registration is. And I'm like, why do you get a different ballot? Why does anybody shouldn't we all get the same ballot with the same candidates on it and decide? Right. And if it's because it's a private company and we shouldn't be deciding private company business, then why is the American taxpayer paying for private company business?
So,
go ahead.
So in other words, so when you mean unrig our elections, because you've been talking about this, especially with ballot access reform, proportional representation, and election security. Sorry for the stutter there.
Yeah.
You're calling for Americans to be open and have true transparency in how they want to vote, especially going forward. So let's say hypothetically you were to win your nomination for the Libertarian Party, and into the general election, miracle upon miracles, you get 5% or above in the general election. And let's even throw in a little sugar of an electoral college vote afterwards. Would you take this message of unrig elections to the various states? And are you familiar then with citizen ballot initiatives?
So I would definitely, this is kind of the movement that we want to do. We're actually going to be pushing this out shortly. And even before I win the nomination, we're going to be pushing this out as kind of a grassroots movement. We want to take this voters' bill of rights, and we want to have citizens take the voters' bill of rights and hand deliver it to their Congress people around the country. And we want to have videos of people hand delivering it and saying, we're fed up, enough is enough. We want to change the system because the system is rigged. We feel disenfranchised. We don't feel like we're represented anymore. My whole life, I haven't felt represented. Nobody I have voted for has won as president in my entire life. Okay. And as a person that lives in California, my option is only Democrat all the time. And what they've done to California is just horrific, and I don't support it at all. And so my whole life I've ended up having to vote for Nancy Pelosi's and Dianne Feinstein's of the world.
I am so sorry that you have to go through that. Must be punishment,
right? And so do those people represent me? No, they absolutely do not. But that's another part of what I'm pushing for is term limits, because I don't believe that we should have career politicians, that people in Congress should be a service position, not a career. And I got that. Go ahead.
So in other words, then just to answer my question, then, are you familiar then with citizen ballot initiatives at the state level? Are you familiar with it at all then?
So in California, we have propositions. Okay. I don't know if that's exactly the same thing, but any citizen can push forth a proposition with enough signatures and enough backing. And so we have propositions all the time in California, and it sounds like a great option. It sounds like that's amazing. Then we can get the people pushing these great options. Unfortunately, California's had these propositions for a long time. There was Prop 13, which is kind of famous for California. It was a tax initiative that essentially froze property taxes in California and changed the property tax situation. But so it seemed like a really great idea. Unfortunately, the government, as always, has figured out a way to rig that system and corrupt that system. And essentially, what has happened is the government of California, anytime that there's a hard legislative action that needs to be taken, the legislature won't take up that action. They turn it into a ballot initiative. They turn it into a proposition and let the people vote on it, so that they can never be held accountable for the hard things that have to be. So basically, that you lose representation. You lose. They stop doing their job. And then what happened that was really bad was all the big money got involved in it. Okay. I mean, really big money got involved in it. And so they manipulate the propositions with heartstring issues. So what they say is, we have to vote for this for the children. We have to vote for this for the old people. We have to vote for this for the veterans. And so they add in a little tiny piece to each proposition that has nothing to do with anything else. Right. And then they sell it on that. And then they put all the ads. They say, how could you be against firefighters? How could you be against the school children? And then they'll be pushing something completely different. Like maybe it's legalized gambling. Maybe it's, a new bond measure or whatever it is. And they push this through with these heartstring issues. And so, in fact, that's why we have this big theft problem in California right now, because they pushed through a proposition that was that essentially the message was, no one should be in jail for smoking a joint. No one should be in jail for having a personal amount of marijuana, which most people in California would agree with that. Okay, that was an easy sell for most people. Yeah, but then what they threw into the bill was they changed all these rules on what was a crime. They changed all these things that used to be felonies into misdemeanors. They essentially made theft up to $950 a misdemeanor inside this bill. And so essentially that's what's causing all the theft to go on in California, is because they just stopped making it a crime to be a thief, essentially. And then when people heard that afterwards, they're like, oh, I wouldn't have voted for that if I had known that was the outcome of what it was, because people don't read the bills. Right? People don't read the minutia of it. And I don't blame them, because Congress doesn't even read the bills that's put before them, and we pay them for that. So why would we expect regular citizens to get really that involved in the minutia of what they're voting on? So they literally just read the headlines and vote on it.
So here's what I'm going to ask you to do, because you're going to have to probably reach out to Larry Sharp, and he should introduce you to Roger Meadows, because if you want to talk about unrigging the elections and actually having ballot access reform, you should know about citizen ballot initiatives. And I think Larry and I are both familiar with Roger Meadows, who's a good friend of the show. I think your message of actually having proportional representation and ballot access reform is something that we desperately need, especially at the state level. You should meet Roger Meadows. So what I want to ask you now, then, to switch things up now, you talk about unrigging the economy and removing the central bankers. Now, don't you get it that the bankers run this place, to quote my U.S. Senator Dick Durbin? So what do you mean by unrigging the economy? Because right now, look, let's face it, Americans are working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. People aren't lazy. They're just burnt out. And, you put money in, and then it disappears. So remove central bankers, fair FICA, and one tax code for everyone. What does that mean? And how is it going to help out my viewing audience? Because I think at this point, everyone's reaching a breaking point. Where's our fair share? Where's the people's fair share? Because everyone's done being polite here, including myself.
Yeah, well, I think, this was the message that Ross Perot and Ron Paul kept beating the drum on, that no one seems to listen to, and that is that our national debt is just ballooning out of control. And you think, well, how does that affect me, Lars? Why do I give a crap about $33 trillion in debt? Well, essentially, when they're printing money, they're reducing your ability to buy things. Your standard of living is dropping every time more national debt is piled on, and the Federal Reserve is, the primary culprit of this, right? With their fractional reserve printing of money, taking $1 and magically turning it into 10. If everybody has tons and tons of money, everything else becomes less valuable, right? Mm-hmm. So it takes more and more money to buy the same goods, and that's inflation, essentially. And we've just gone through a huge bout of that. And the reason we had this crazy inflation was we were helicopter dropping money from COVID all over the place, to corporations, to citizens. I mean, we printed like $9 trillion within 1 to 2 years. It was like 35% of all debt ever created, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. So that created this inflation, and the Federal Reserve basically just creates boom bust cycles. And every time they are printing this money, the money flows down from the Federal Reserve and it goes to asset holders first. It goes to the banks first, and then the banks lend it to the corporations. And by the time it trickles down to the regular working class people, only 3% of the money that was printed ends up in the pockets of regular people. And so that is why we have income inequality. The Federal Reserve is primarily responsible for income inequality. They are basically printing tons of money and handing it out only to the top elites, and the regular people are getting shoved down farther and farther and farther. And so we need to rein in this Federal Reserve. This is what Ron Paul was talking about forever, and he's 100% correct. And so I want to elect Ron Paul as the last chair of the Federal Reserve. I want to get him in there and shut that down and get rid of that.
So long as anyone's part of the Republican or Democratic Party, I gotta say no, definitely break away from the two-party system. I am a purist through and through. It's either you break the two-party system, abolish all political parties, but having anyone with the RNC or DNC buy them, and even if you were to mention a Democrat, I'd still have to say things. If it's a Democrat or Republican, they're not people. Don't come on. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, people are struggling. Like that's part of what motivated me to run, is that all of my friends are just regular working people. They're construction people. They work, they're plumbers. They're just regular folks, teachers, that sort of thing. And so I see that they're struggling. I see that they're having to choose between medication and food. I'm seeing that they're having to choose what they can put clothes on their kids or gas in their tank to get to work. And like you said, a lot of people are working 2 or 3 jobs just to get by. And, you go to any city in America and there's homeless people everywhere. That wasn't the case when I was a kid, right? America is failing its citizens. That's the bottom line. And then we're literally sending $100 billion to Ukraine, while there's more and more people living on the street in America. And that just seems wrong to me on a fundamental level. And we, one of the things I talk about is that does any citizen feel like the money that the government steals from us is spent wisely and efficiently? And no one ever answers me yes, that they believe that. The government spends the money, it's not their money, so they don't care. Essentially, right? And because they can print endless amounts of it, they just don't really have any feeling about it or any care about the whole monetary system. They've given up. And it's not just Democrats at this point. The Republicans have completely thrown in the towel too, and they sign off on all these budgets that just balloon the debt, and they just don't care, because the reality of it is most of them won't be in office when the toll comes due. Right. And essentially the way I see this all kind of coming to fruition is what happened in Detroit. In Detroit, they just kept promising and promising and promising more and more money to all the different people that were working in government. And it's easy to promise the future money, but the problem is the tax revenue was drying up because Detroit was shrinking, because the economy was shrinking there, and eventually they ended up going bankrupt because there just wasn't any money to pay all those promises that they had made. So America right now has a lot of promises. We have Social Security promises, we have Medicare promises, we have a lot of promises at the federal government, which is just a ticking time bomb. Eventually that toll is going to come due, and essentially all Americans are going to end up having to pay for it.
Well, I'm looking at my audience too, and a lot of them are definitely indicating that there should be a look into, at least people should be speaking more about the modern monetary theory. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. That's a clown show. I'm not a fan of modern monetary theory at all. I think that they believe that you can just print essentially endlessly, and that the government has that ability, and so therefore there's no end in sight to the amount of money that you can print. But I totally disagree with that.
Okay, but in many ways, the way our government has been acting, there is a lot that our government can do, or at least in theory, there's a lot that could be done to help out working class citizens, because again, we're able to crap out all this money for Ukraine. We're able to bail out Wall Street and big banks and corporations. If we were to do an Uno reverse, there's a lot that could be done to, again, rebuild our infrastructure, help out U.S. citizens. So, I mean, this is something that should be looked into instead of dismissing it, because I feel that, and again, maybe again, if more is looked into this, especially how the current management is running things, the American people's lives could be astronomically better, and we wouldn't be having this massive homelessness crisis, or is it that this boiling rage that is rightfully brewing amongst Americans across the nation, because people are angry. I mean, we see it. Ukraine 100%. Ukraine is getting these billions of dollars, yet the people of Maui get a one-time $700 check.
Yeah,
I mean, it's right there in front of us. They could help us.
They don't even hide it anymore. They don't even hide it anymore. They literally are not representing the people anymore. They represent the interest of big business. I call the duopoly the party of the corporations. That essentially we have crony capitalism. Both sides have completely embraced it. For the regular people, what the things that I'm interested in doing is, and you mentioned the fair FICA. There's a number of, my end goal is the least amount of taxes possible. That's my kind of North Star. But on the way there's many things that I could be interested in. And one is that, different groups of people pay different FICA taxes. I would like to get rid of FICA altogether. I would like to end all payroll taxes. I would like to also abolish the income tax and replace it with the fair tax. I got that from Ron Paul. I thought that was an interesting idea, and Gary Johnson was pushing that as well. And I believe that the tax system is cruel. It's coercive. No one should live in fear of what their government can do to them if they file some paperwork wrong. And there's a lot easier ways of funding the government without that kind of coercive piece, right? And the tax code is completely manipulated by the duopoly, by the Congress, to grant favors to the rich and the powerful. And that is another way that kind of keeps the regular people down. They use the tax code to benefit the rich and the powerful, and then suppress the little people. FICA taxes is it's a huge burden on people, right? If you were able to take that money and put it in your pocket, that would go a long way to keeping you out of being homeless, essentially. So I'd like to see people keep 100% of their paycheck.
So as a final point of this question, I do appreciate your time joining us for our morning show. Number one, when is the Libertarian primary going to take place? And again, how is your campaign going to really step ahead of your competition? And then finally, where can we find you online and social media? So if anyone wants to support your work or support your campaign, where can they go?
Yeah. So the convention will be in May in Washington, D.C. in 2024. And the kind of difference between me and my competition is, when you're in a third party, the fundraising is challenging. Okay, it's for candidates. All the candidates are having a hard time fundraising because we don't have the infrastructure that the Republicans and the Democrats have. And so one of the things that I bring to the table is I'm self-funding my campaign. I was fortunate enough to, like I said, sell my company in 2007 for a significant amount of money. And so this gives me legs to reach out more on social media than my competition, to get the message of libertarianism out there. I think that a little bit of my background is problem solving and kind of thinking outside the box a little bit more than maybe the other candidates do. And so I'm bringing fresh ideas that aren't necessarily just rehashes of the same old thing over and over again that we've heard from other candidates. And I want to win this electoral vote. Imagine on election night, California is blue, Texas is red, Florida is red, New York is blue. And what the hell is this gold doing on the map, right? And imagine if we were the deciding factor in the election, that there was enough electoral votes taken to stop either candidate from getting to 270. And the election had to go to the Congress in order to decide who was going to be president of the United States. And they don't have to pick any of the people that are running. They could pick anyone they want. So that would be a really interesting thing. And it would certainly put libertarians on the map. People would be, mainstream media would talk nonstop about how we threw the election, we broke the election. That's part of unrigging the system, is we need to throw a wrench in the cogs of the system and just break it. And so that people can wake up and say, wow, I didn't realize how messed up this was. And look, there is an opportunity for third parties, for more voices to get involved in American politics and change what we have. Because if we keep going down the same road, we're going to continue to get Donald Trump and Joe Biden over and over again in different skins. And if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of this process, it's time for the 50% of Americans who are registered as independents to say, screw it. I want to throw a wrench against the system. I'm going to vote for Lars Mapstead, and we're going to change things. We're going to make things different. Maybe I'm not president of the United States, but we can send a clear message to the Republic that we're fed up. We're tired of it. Your vote should be for a third party to send the message that we're fed up. We're done playing with the duopoly, and we want something different.
Well, I identify as independent left, but I have said this on the show that I want to see that scenario for not only for the libertarians, but for the Greens as well. And I encourage people to consider breaking away from the two-party system and voting independent, because there is a silent majority and people do need to wake up. Lars, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day for joining us. All the best to you on your campaign. And here's hoping that you get the nomination. Maybe we'll do a follow-up interview as well. But please take care. I encourage everyone else who's still watching our live stream show, stay tuned, because we got other programs and stories to cover. Lars, all the best to you, and please take good care of yourself, and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I've tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you close. really want to set you free, but I really want to let you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. When I know too well it's open season, I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. No, what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks I'm anywhere else, if I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book, and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul. This world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth, then demand 1,000-fold. I tried to block the light just so I could keep you close.